Hey, it's Jordan with TYT Politics here in D.C. President Trump has been president for a few hours. The world has not ended yet, so I'm feeling good about it. I'm here with Tim Canova. Obviously, you were one of the biggest progressive candidates across the country. Aside from Bernie Sanders, you ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz, gave her a really good fight, and I think that you showed on the local level that if you actually have a progressive message, there's plenty of money that can come with that and small dollar contributions, as well as plenty of activists. I mean, I was down there. You had a volunteer army, contributions from not just Florida, but around the country. Talk to me about since that primary, what have you seen with Trump winning, the Democratic Party's response? Where do you think we're at now?
Well, we're still in the same fight for the heart and soul of the Democratic Party that we were fighting last year during my primary and when Bernie Sanders was running for president. And I think the Democratic Party's in a real state of denial. All of this talk about Russia and the FBI is a way of distracting attention from the role that the corruption of the DNC and the failures of the Hillary Clinton campaign played in this election fiasco. And you know, this has been going on for a long time. The 2010 and 2014 elections were absolute disasters for the Democratic Party, and not just in Congress, but all over the country at the state levels, state legislatures and governorships. And a lot of that was masked by having Obama at the top of the ticket. But the party's been in a free fall. It still is in Florida as well. And I'm afraid we're not learning the lessons because there's just too much of distraction talk about Russia.
Yeah. And I think also, you know, when you look at this talk about Trump normalized racism and we can't let racism be normalized. Well, under Obama and the Democratic leadership, well, like human rights violations have been normalized in North Dakota, in Flint, in Indiana. Right now there's a pipeline going through in Florida, the Sable pipeline. It's not like America, you know, 8 hours ago before Trump was like this shining democracy. I don't want to say all doom and gloom. It's not all the Democrats' fault. Republicans are just as corrupt, if not worse. However, you know, you see now, I'm not criticizing Bernie Sanders, but he is standing on stages with Chuck Schumer, who's a friend of Wall Street. You have the Democratic Party is still talking about the DNC chair argument seems to be about the new ways of fundraising. I haven't heard a lot about new ways of reaching out to people. Where do you specifically see if they get out of this Russia Cold War fear-mongering, how does the Democratic Party repair itself? And frankly, is it time to start thinking beyond the Democratic Party?
I'm a Democrat still, so I'm still committed to trying to reform the party from within. I do think it's very helpful to have movements outside the party to help prod the party in the right direction. You know, you mentioned Bernie. I think his hands are tied in a lot of ways because of the nature of his position. But a lot of us don't have our hands tied, and we can be working a lot harder to reform the party in ways that maybe people on the inside can't. You know, I watched the recent Huffington Post debate of the 7 candidates for chair of the DNC, and it was revealing when they spoke about fundraising. And Sally Boynton Brown was very clear that we have got to stop taking corporate lobbyist donations at the DNC. And all the other candidates, most of them in one form or another, expressed concern that we'd be cutting off our nose to spite our face. We need that money. Money will help. You know, Hillary outspent Trump by 2 to 1. Money alone is not going to solve the problem for the Democratic Party.
And I guess they weren't paying attention to a guy named Tim Canova, who, as far as I know, didn't do one call with any Wall Street guys, any big oil, and you got on your campaign in Florida in a district several $1 million.
Yes, we raised $3.8 million. I held to my pledge from the beginning that we would not take a single penny from any corporate interests, and I didn't make one single call for fundraising. And, you know, we were rewarded for honoring that pledge. We were rewarded by the grassroots coming out and 200,000 times giving small donations online. That's the point that Sally Boynton Brown was making in this DNC debate, that if we cut off donations from corporations to the DNC, the grassroots will respond and start helping the Democratic Party. You can't have it both ways. When the grassroots knows that you're swimming in corporate money, they don't trust you. It's not believable anymore. So right now we've got 2 parties, and they're both corporate owned essentially. And if it's a choice between, I suppose, the Trump Republican Party, which is corporate-owned and climate change deniers, or a corporate-owned Democratic Party, which will admit there's climate change, but they act, unfortunately, with a lot of hypocrisy. The voters, we see, are not clearly going to go with Democrats, if that's the choice. I think when you give the grassroots of this country, Democrats, Republicans, and independents alike, a real choice and a real progressive agenda, that it's an agenda for the people, they will respond positively. You know, we fell short in my race, but I was a candidate for only 8 months, up against somebody who had been involved in Florida politics for 24 years.
And by the way, let's drop the veil, has a lot of older, big money people, frankly, in her pocket in Florida.
Absolutely. And, you know, that hasn't changed at all, of course, since the election. So the establishment is still ruling the roost in Florida, and it's a concern. You know, when I started the campaign, there were a host of issues we were campaigning on, and a lot of them were economic. You know, I'm a law professor. I've been teaching at universities for years. I've seen the kind of job market that the millennials are facing and that my generation, the boomers, are facing. Over the course of the campaign, I always had a very strong, you could say, agenda on clean water and the environment. But the fracking issue has become so much more front and center in the past few months, because there are fracking interests that want to start fracking the Everglades and all over Florida. You know, the Obama Environmental Protection Agency waited 5 years to finally come out with their report on fracking just in December, in which they concluded that fracking does contaminate drinking water. You know, I don't know why it took 5 years. Josh Fox's movie Gasland came out 6 years ago. What I find so disturbing is to now start learning about the support that big private water companies have for the fracking industry. You know, so there's a vested interest in actually contaminating the water so that we, the people, become much more dependent on a privatized water system and, you know, buying what? We're going to export liquefied natural gas to China, apparently. And
that's what happened in Flint. They wanted to basically switch off of Detroit's water, go to this Karagandhi Water Authority, which is a privatized water system. Right. In the meantime, before the pipeline was ready, we were going to switch to the Flint River, which is the equivalent of the Hudson River, which you grew up there. Exactly. Dead bodies and so we saw that example in Flint, and now, like you said, all over the country.
That's right. You know, Bayonne, New Jersey, there was just a big article about how Bayonne had privatized their water system. The residents are paying higher and higher rates. The infrastructure is not really being repaired the way it needs to be. And then, you know, at the same time that you got fracking growing, you got the pipelines that will transport the fracked gas. And it's not just the Dakota Access Pipeline. In Florida, we've got the Sable Trail Pipeline. And this is a 500-mile, $3 billion project, and I've been calling it the Sinkhole Trail Pipeline. It goes right through the part of Florida, beautiful part. It goes underneath some major, beautiful rivers like the Swanee River and Crystal River and the Santa Fe River and many others. This is the aquifer that provides drinking water for 60% of Florida. And it's also sinkhole country. So you might remember about a year or two ago, a man was sleeping in his bed when a sinkhole swallowed up his house. Never found the man. He perished. You know, that's the nature of sinkholes. They open up in unexpected places. All you need is a sinkhole to open up underneath that pipeline, and the law of gravity will collapse that pipeline and open it up. That pipeline will be pumping 1.6 billion gallons of frack gas in a day into the Florida aquifer. So it's a very dangerous situation that's got to stop. And unfortunately, the political establishment has no interest in stopping it. In Florida, we just selected a new Democratic Party chair, Stephen Patel, who is a multimillionaire investor who supported Wasserman Schultz, and he's part of the establishment. And, you know, he's a nice guy who has a lot of good intentions for the party, but he has, while he's spoken out critically about fracking, he's also said that as long as we have a petroleum economy, we need more pipelines. And that's just the wrong attitude. And I think the voters are way ahead of the politicians on this. In Florida, statewide, the voters voted for 2 referendums. They voted the right way on 2 referendums for solar power in the past year. And we should be able to convert to a solar, wind, wave, and, you know, alternative, renewable, sustainable energy economy Not in 20 or 30 years. We don't have that kind of time. We've got to do it in the next 2 or 3 years. And that's what Democrats should be calling for and demanding. And, you know, there's a tendency among unions to resist this. You know, the pipe fitters union, for instance, which endorsed me in my campaign, they're concerned if we're going to shut down pipelines, are there going to be pipe fitting jobs? Well, you know, at the same time that we shut down these pipelines, we've got to be rebuilding the pipes underneath cities like Flint. They're operating with pipes that are 100 years old. So we should be able to employ pipe fitters and other workers in rebuilding our infrastructure and at the same time converting to a solar, green, New Deal type of an economy.
And lastly, you know, I don't like to be like those corporate journalists. Would you like to announce your run for the presidency now? But I have a suspicion this is not the last we've heard of you. I'm assuming you've been thinking about your future. What should people know about your next move if there's going to be one politically?
Well, I'm being urged all the time to run again, as you can imagine, both in Florida and around the country. I got a lot of supporters.
And we should say, I mean, honestly, you didn't lose it was not a blowout.
No.
And again, you basically had no name recognition there against the establishment candidate in a district that was very senior citizens, very high in senior citizens. A lot of Jewish people live there. She's the first Jewish congressman. So it was a David versus Goliath.
Yeah, it was. And we did well. And, you know, there's a lot of reason to think that in a rematch, we could take Wasserman Schultz down. I'm considering that, but I'm considering other offices as potentially to run for. I haven't made up my mind. I'm not a professional politician, but I firmly believe that it's important for people who are not professional politicians to step up and challenge these incumbents. It's the only way the system's going to change.
Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.